Welcome, everyone. We know you have many choices when selecting your professional development activities, and there are some really amazing opportunities here at the University of Arizona Global Campus, or UAGC, and beyond. We are happy that you chose to be here today as the UAGC Department of Education and Liberal Arts proudly presents to you Ed Talks. I am Dr. Jessie Upshaw, and I'm honored to lead the Professional Development Committee of the Department of Education and Liberal Arts here in the UAGC College of Arts and Sciences. I will be your host this afternoon. For those of you that are new to Ed Talks, this is not your traditional professional development webinar. Ed Talks are fashioned after TED Talks, the ever popular way of sharing concepts through personal storytelling. Our 2022 Ed Talk series is entitled The Power of One, Empower Our Students, which provides a foundation in the online higher education environment to develop and foster the power of meeting students where they are in their classrooms through course design, instruction, and interactions with students to support skills that can transcend the online higher education classroom and stay with them after they have met their goals. Today's session is entitled Barriers of Academic Language. And here to explore and extend UAGC's culture of care and power of one with her story inspired by breaking down the barriers of academic language into teachable moments and student empowerment is Dr. Ishonté Allar. As you listen to Ishonté's story, you might listen for your call to action to share your practices that support a culture of care and empowerment in your classroom and your interactions with students and colleagues. Or perhaps you'll find a new practice that her story or our discussion sparks for you. Ishonté, will you come on camera and say hello as I introduce you?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Welcome. Thank you. Dr. Ishonté Allar is a core faculty member in the Ed Studies program in the Department of Education and Liberal Arts at UAGC. Ishonté resides in West Virginia with her husband, 2 sons, 2 dogs, and a plethora of plants. That's hard to say. A lifelong learner and educator, she has taught all ages, including pre-K through adult, in both face-to-face and online formats. In her local community, she has served as a preschool teacher, middle school educator, and sports coach. Additionally, she has run before and after school programs and summer camps for students in grades K through 5. She spent many summers as a mentor and faculty member for high school students in the Health Sciences and Technology Academy, which is a mentoring program that helps underrepresented high school students enter and succeed in STEM-based undergraduate and graduate degree programs. Thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Allar. Ishonté, I'm now going to ask that we remove our videos so we can get started after a few brief reminders. As a reminder, Ed Talks are fashioned after TED Talks, the ever popular way of sharing personal stories for only 18 minutes of monologue. We do this because we want to hear your stories, and we can best do that by sharing our stories. Our goal here is not necessarily to teach you anything new, as you are already an expert in your field. Our goal is to perhaps motivate you to try something new in your approach to helping your students succeed. Our storytelling approach is geared to not take a lot of your time, but rather to simply set the stage for an interactive conversation and perhaps encourage you to encourage your students in some new way. At the end of our Ed Talk today, we look forward to hearing your story of what you are doing or will do in your classroom or educational setting. After Dr. Allar's story, we will all invite you as participants to share your reflection and practices. So with that said, audience members, if you could please hold your comments and chat to the end while we listen to Ishonté's story. Let's get started. Ishonté, the microphone is yours.
Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to share my story with you. Be thinking about these questions that we will revisit at the end. So I'm born and raised in Martinsburg, West Virginia. The area I've spent most of my life is not what many picture as being West Virginia. First, we're not a part of Virginia. We are our own state and have been for quite some time. Second, where I'm from is not a very rural area. I am from the more cityfied part of the state, which is as city-like as you can get in West Virginia. We're about 15 minutes from Maryland and 20 minutes from Virginia. DC and Baltimore are just a quick drive or train ride away. We have multiple stop signs and stoplights, a Walmart, a mall, a hospital, and at times we even have traffic. Sure, I had quick access to the Shenandoah River, Blue Ridge Mountains, other outdoor beauty and wildlife that John Denver so famously sang about in Country Roads, but it wasn't in my backyard like so many that I meet assume, and I didn't live on a farm. Out of 50 states, West Virginia ranks 45th in education, 4th in childhood obesity, 4th in poverty, 2nd in adult obesity, and number 1 in type 2 diabetes. Yes, it's true, we have some work to do, but despite its shortcomings, I'm still here, though I've moved to another city-fied part of the state. And sorry, Ohioans, but I'd rather raise my kids here than my husband's hometown in Ohio. Besides, this is the only place to get a pepperoni roll done proper. The high school I attended, unbeknownst to me at the time, was considered the bad school. But for me, it was the only and the best choice. Private school wasn't affordable, and I had no interest. As far as demographics go, according to the last census, there are 19,000 residents in Martinsburg. 79% are white, 14% Black, 5% Hispanic, and 2% Asian. Current statistics show my high school is having around 1,500 students with 60% Caucasian, 21% African American, 11% Hispanic, and 0.7% Asian. Also, 59% of students are on free or reduced lunch. As far as my other options for high school, they were what we referred to as the redneck school or the hillbilly school, and they were certainly not options for a young woman of color. I was already 9 times out of 10 the only Black person in my classes, and I really look forward to lunchtime so I could be with others like me. Picture the lunchroom scene from Mean Girls, and you would definitely find me at the Black Hotties table, only we didn't have white girls coming up to our table waving and saying Jumbo like Lindsay Lohan did in the movie. If I was to switch schools, there would be no such table for me to sit at or a seat at any other table for that matter. There would be essentially no place for me. I may be in the minority here, but I can say that I mostly enjoyed my high school experience and felt prepared when I went to college. I thought my transition was smooth and easy. I was a top performer in my majors cohort, and other than my math courses, I was having no issues and earning A's. I remember sitting in an undergrad health course talking with my peers, waiting for class to start. The TA was passing out our papers. Naturally, when I got mine, I looked to see what my grade was, expecting to see my usual A. My heart, and probably my mouth too, dropped. My blood pressure rose. I got an F. Dude, you cannot be serious. I know you lying. There's no way that I failed. I am the person people come to when they are confused, have questions, or need help. I took honors classes in high school, and though the tests weren't in my family's budget, I still took AP courses in various subjects and excelled in them. This had to be a mistake. There is no way that I failed. I asked others what they had received. They all passed. I put a lot of time and effort into this assignment, certainly more than some of my peers. I didn't get bad grades. So how did they pass and I didn't? Some of them went to the redneck and hillbilly schools in my county or the neighboring county. Crap, maybe I really did go to the bad high school. In my panic, I failed to notice the note from Dr. Rieger Nash to see him. By now, I'm verbally stating my displeasure, as now others around me know that I did not do well, and I'm embarrassed. My professor noticed the commotion and came over to see what was going on. While it was a blur, I know for certain that I was defensive and not respectful in my response. He calmly asked me if I would like to go out in the hallway and speak while the TA got the day's lecture started. Once in the hallway, I went into a narrative about how this wasn't fair, how I had worked really hard and followed all of the directions. He again calmly spoke with me. He said that the issue with my paper was plagiarism. I told him it was not plagiarism. Plagiarism was when you copy someone else's work or turn in someone else's paper. I definitely didn't do that. This was my own work, and I had spent hours on it. He went on to explain to me that plagiarism was more than that, and that I wasn't using APA format correctly. What is APA format anyway? I had never heard of that until college. In high school, we talked about MLA and maybe used it a few times, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I put all of these papers I use for research into a generator and put the sources at the end in this special format. What more was there, and what were these percentages in the margins of my paper? Despite my anger, Dr. Rieger Nash explained to me that I needed to have in-text citations too, and that they would not look the same as the ones I had at the end. He also explained to me that the percentages were how much it matched an original source according to something called turnitin.com. Despite my rudeness, he then told me that I could redo the assignment for full credit if I would remedy these things. I was relieved, and then he surprisingly said to me, "Hey, have you considered getting your PhD?" What? I had just failed miserably, considering why I was even in college, highly emotional, disrespectful, and here he was encouraging me. I told him I was not cut out for that, thanked him for allowing me to redo the work, and that I'd get it back to him by the end of the week. He told me of some APA formatting sites that could be helpful and offered to set up a time to meet with me as well should I need additional help. With the help of the resources provided and the help of a classmate, I resubmitted and got my A. By the time I got to my final master's degree, I thought I was in a good place with my writing. I hadn't failed any other papers and felt confident. Then I got to my practicum. I got destroyed. Each week, our professor would print off our papers and have a conference with us. There was so much red on my papers. I felt defeated. I felt angry. She told me that my writing was too subjective, and in academic writing, I had to be objective. I had no idea what she was talking about. With my teaching background, to me, an objective was a goal, and subjective to me was to stay on the topic at hand because I saw the word subject. That's when she explained to me the meanings and differences between those two in an academic sense. She then went through each page and explained it to me and offered suggestions. I did find solace in that some of my classmates also had lots of markup, and of course we all complained about it to one another. I did, however, pass and was able to move on with my studies. Surprisingly, despite what I told my professor and myself in undergrad, I decided to get my PhD. By this time, I'm feeling good. I know how to use APA. I'm writing objectively. Life is good. You all know what's coming, right? I get feedback from my chair about a writing submission. And it said something like, your sentences are short and choppy. Combine sentences with conjunctions. Link sentences through subordination. Huh? Does this man not know how busy I am? I just had a baby and he does not sleep. We have no family nearby, and my husband is a coach. I am the one who takes my oldest to and from school, appointments, activities, you name it. I have a whole household to run over here, and I'm doing the best I can. What is he even talking about? Y'all want me to be objective and stick to the facts. I'm doing that. I'm pretty sure I remember and know what conjunctions are, but what's subordination? Isn't that when you disobey someone in authority or something? I told him I didn't know what he meant, and that's when he provided me with examples and went through it with me page by page. He also let me know about the Writing Center on campus as an additional resource. I'm happy to say that I had grown by this time, and I didn't get angry or defensive. Well, at least not outwardly. So why am I telling you all of this? Let me give you an example. If you went to get something to drink from your refrigerator, would you grab yourself a soda or a pop? What you would get depends on where you grew up. but whether you grab a soda or a pop, your thirst will be quenched either way. Thirsty students may never be quenched if we do not realize the barriers with something as simple as academic language being that said barrier. Dr. Donna Beagle of Communication Across Barriers talks about how where she comes from, language is primarily verbal, spontaneous, and repetitive. She also talks about how she had to learn middle-class English on her path to academic success, which she notes as being essential. Dr. Beagle states that students in poverty often struggle in classrooms to understand middle-class vocabulary, sentence structure, and examples. These issues are exacerbated in an online environment where most communication is nonverbal. That's just one reason why the Power of One initiative is important. With its focus on student care, areas include communication, saying it in multiple ways, and aiming to understand student needs by assuming students' best intentions. My personal academic experiences have helped me with my own practice. I try to be aware of language that I'm using that is academic in nature because it is not always known or common, some of which was not known to me until I got to various points of my collegiate studies. I try to use practical language, or when using an academic term, explain it further in plain language, much like my professors did for me. Recently, I had a graduate student who was turning in work where things weren't quite making sense, so much so that I thought that they were maybe using a paraphrasing software because of the word salad I was seeing. They responded to my feedback, letting me know that English was not their first language and that sometimes it was hard for them to write down what they were trying to say. They had a personal goal of improving in this area. Once I knew that, I made it a point to give feedback in audio message each week, explaining what was incorrect, why, and how to revise it. It was truly awesome to see their writing improve by the end of that 6 weeks. Another strategy I've learned is to be patient and give my students the benefit of the doubt. I try not to assume that they're doing something on purpose or being lazy. It may be time-consuming and frustrating at times, with plagiarism in particular, but I've learned to embrace these teachable moments and remember being in their shoes at one time too. It's important to get over the attitude that students should know better, or the I got over it, they should too mindset. Like the Power of One handout on student care says, confrontational behaviors often are the result of student frustration, disappointment, or anxiety that can be resolved through our reassurance of student care. I try not to take it personal if a student is defensive, but diffuse it by sharing my own story and experience because I remember being where they are. Taking another tip from my 3 professors, I provide specific examples to go with my feedback. And as suggested by the Power of One, I do so in various formats. In addition to written feedback, I use the voice feature as mentioned previously, and I also offer to Zoom with students to go through the work with them in real time. So that way I can answer any questions they have and explain things in a different way if necessary. Sometimes if I have a major concern, I will just call or text them to see if they're available to discuss at that moment. And if not, we set up a date in the near future for a Zoom or a phone call. In this way, I feel like we can have a regular informal conversation where they can hear my voice, see my face if it's on Zoom, we can go back and forth, and it doesn't seem like I'm talking down to them because I don't know about you, but my frustration morphs into rage when I feel like someone is talking to me like I am stupid. Each week, I post a weekly video going over the main ideas and work to be completed. It may be redundant to what's posted in the course. However, students have told me that it makes them feel more comfortable, helps them understand better, and they feel like they can approach me. I do this because I try to explain what's there in a quicker, simpler way and address common pitfalls I see. Because the bulk of our content is written, we often interact with students via discussions, announcements, and feedback. The issues I most often see are related to obstacles that I also had: writing and plagiarism. I wrote the way I spoke, and I see this with my students as well. Additionally, APA format was new to me, and it's new to many of them as well. Reflecting further upon my own experiences, how things have changed. I remember having access to my college's library and databases, but no one offered us or told us of any proofreading resources available. I didn't even know about my campus's writing center and the help available there until I got to my doctoral studies. And I completed all of my degrees at the same college. Think about it. It took over a decade to be given this knowledge. How much more could this resource have helped me if I had known about it sooner? What other resources were available to me that I didn't even know about? I say all this to point out that if we don't sell the resources that our students have access to, they're not going to use them. Let's make a big deal about them from the beginning of each course that they have, in videos, in announcements, on assignments, in our feedback, in conversations, everywhere that we possibly can. I find myself often referring students to Grammarly or the UAGC Writing Center as part of my feedback. Having additional conversations with them regarding these resources allows us the time to go back through the resources together and for me to explain them in layman's terms if necessary. If they're unable to meet, I strongly encourage them to run the submission through Grammarly on their own, especially when the errors are plentiful or repetitive. Grammarly has a great feature where you can click Learn More. It explains what's wrong and offers examples in addition to their suggestions. It will even break down some academic terms. However, I do feel like there are times when those need further breakdown, so verbal conversation allows this to happen. My favorite resources from the Writing Center are the videos and the quizzes. I think that these are a great substitution for if a student is not able to meet, and they are both written and spoken in simple language where any academic terms are explained and expanded upon. Some of the quizzes also allow the results to be sent to an additional person. So this also allows a chance for a further discussion with me if any terms or concepts remain unclear. Resources help to tear down the barriers of academic language in two ways. One, by helping our students understand, and two, lifting them up so that they can now use that academic language as a result of their understanding. When I think about the attributes of a Power One instructor, I can't help but think about Dr. Bill Rieger Nash, whose hyphenated name is actually a result of taking his wife's last name, by the way. He was flexible, patient, kind, helpful. He let me be frustrated. He was compassionate. He cared. He uplifted me, got to know me, and he let me know that it was no mistake that I was there. We keep in contact today, and he still provides words of affirmation and encouragement. Your role as an educator matters and is critical to the Power One initiative right from the start. Pay attention to student intros, as they can tell us a lot. Where are they from? Is it soda or is it pop? Sneakers or tennis shoes? Carts or buggies? In the beginning, I share some stats about where I come from. Despite what we look like on paper, I'm proud of where I come from and I will claim it every single time. I am a student. I am a fighter. I am a defender. It's not my nature to be defensive, but it's where I come from. I have to fight for my spot, and more times than not, I am your UAGC student, and I'm in your class right now. Your students are fighters. They are choosing to take on a college education despite their life circumstances. Instead of just going through the motions and checking boxes, I want to challenge you today to not just meet students where they are, but to do your part to remove the barriers that may be hindering their academic success when it comes to academic language. Thank you so much for your time and your attention today. Back to you, Jesse.
Thank you, Ishonté. And it's Coke down here in Dallas, even though I grew up in rural Wisconsin where it was pop. So it does depend on where you're at. As I was listening to Dr. Allar's story, I was remembering how many editions of the APA manual I've gone through since I started my post-secondary education. And I think I'm up to 5. I started with the 3rd manual and now we're up to 7. And Dr. Allar, you'll be able to see here in the chat, many people were emotionally affected by the APA word, both the calling to the Writing Center as well as the use of APA and how it affects students. Ishonté has posed some questions for us to consider here as we reflect on our own practice, looking through that lens of empowering students. For those of you that are here today, we are going to open up the chat lines for you to consider your takeaways from today's story. Let's frame our discussion. What are you currently doing in your practice to support student success? And what are you inspired to do next? Please start sharing your impression, your ideas, or perhaps your new approach in the chat. And be sure your chat is set to everyone. We would also love to hear from you. To share using your audio, please simply raise your hand using the hand icon on the bottom of your screen, and you'll be given the opportunity to unmute your microphone and share your story or reflection with us that way. We do invite you to join the conversation now to inspire others with your story. You might be considering what language do you speak and how are you understood? How do you move from barrier to builder when the words get in the way? And how do you create power of one space for personal understanding and growth? I saw some big shout outs for the Writing Center. Millie, I see you. I see you. I see a hand, Jerry. I'm going to go ahead and call on you here. All right, Jerry, you have the floor.
Hi, Jesse. Thank you for a wonderful conversation, Dr. Allar. I really appreciated many of your comments. One of the things that stood out to me is when you mentioned soda and pop. That is such a wonderful, simplistic way of stating a very, very big problem. I enjoyed your picture of the different entities, if you will, in your classroom, the Katie classroom, I believe you called it. I have spent a lot of time in the Colorado, Wyoming, Montana areas. And one of the things I learned growing up through school as well as in school, graduate school and so forth, was the case of the American Indian. The American Indians are oftentimes in the position that you described as being those who were thought to be stupid or thought to be uneducated or lacked the knowledge or the skills to participate in a greater society. I take a different look at power of one in most people, I think. One seems singular to me. And I like the power of one, one meaning a tribe, just like the Indians consider one. And there's a phrase from the Sioux or Dakota Nation, depending on how you look at it, called Mitakuye Oyasin, which means we are all related. And I like to set up my classes when I start introductions and so forth, bringing everybody into that tribe. Nobody is above or below anybody else. We're all the same. So when you talk about academic barriers, language barriers, I see an even more important subset of that, and that is language barriers, period. We deal with so many different kinds of people. We have military, we have every kind of vocation or industry in our classes. And nobody speaks the same language. We use the same words often, but we don't mean the same things with them. And I think it takes, if you spend time up front, getting to know the people, getting to know how they think, giving them a chance to establish their own credibility with everyone else, they feel like they're a member of the tribe. And if you ever look at an Indian tribal council, No one stands up above the rest. They are all sitting at the same level. And I think that's exactly what I feel Power of One means. So I thought I'd share that with you because I really appreciate what you said. It was very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And adding in that additional reflection of one can mean all of us. I got a chill when you said that. I love that look. Dr. Allar, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, just thank you for sharing that additional perspective. I completely agree with that. And I'm just really excited about the Power One initiative. I just think it's very unique and, just happy to be a part of that and just really make a difference and impact even more students.
And you've given us some reflection of making sure we're expanding out our thoughts of the different languages. Like you said, it's not only the different languages of origin, but also the language of the military, the language of academics. We're looking at all the different ways of that. So thank you for bringing that to light, Jerry. Appreciate you. Debbie, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thanks. Can you hear me okay, Jesse? Yes. Tay, you just rocked that ed talk. I love how you just remind us of every student coming in with the intention to be a fighter, with the intention to pursue and persevere in their degrees, and that the language we use can seem so intimidating. And even when you said, I always try to refrain in the chat, and when you said your paper lacks subordination, I couldn't even help myself. I'm like, oh God, I don't even know what I would say to get a comment like that would so confuse me and make me feel scared to write further. So I think that what you're doing with your weekly videos, your videos are awesome. And that you just level the space, you create that intimacy, you create that comfort. So when you explain things in simpler terms and you help them to avoid pitfalls, this makes them feel like they can come to you now. You've opened the door for questions and for vulnerability, and they need to feel that. So you've taught me that is something that could be a next step for me. And yes, I would just like to second the quizzes in the Writing Center. The more we can go into the Writing Center and pull out specific resources and have weekly sharing time where we show them what's in there, we increase the value of the center, we show them how it can meet their needs. I loved it. Thank you, Tay, for teaching us something today.
Well, I want to thank you for being a great mentor because you introduced me actually to the Writing Center quizzes, and then I was able to delve deeper into that. And as far as like the videos go, I really try to push that and try to get as many students as possible to watch those and just try to be more approachable and just kind of be myself. At first I was like, oh, I need to put on something dressy, but then I would just kind of wear what I had on to just be like I was more approachable and not, higher up than them, but on the same field, hey, this is what you need to do this week. This is what I see people do wrong most often. If you have a question, reach out to me now. So I feel like it's still kind of like an informal conversation in a way, but you're still guiding them through the content and just explaining it in a better way. Not a better way, but maybe a way they may understand better than just reading it.
And that's the goal. That's the goal. It's awesome.
Thank you, Debbie. Julie, I see your hand. Before we get to you, I saw in the chat earlier on before it disappears on me, Cindy, Donna, Lance are discussing things about seeing through local vernacular, being flexible and offering those options, as Dr. Allar has mentioned, a phone calls, Zoom calls, walking people through things, and then guiding them through the grammar, giving those pieces. So I wanted to recognize that. Julie, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So when you were talking about your experience with plagiarism, it reminded me of experiences that I've had with students when I, address them with their papers showing a high similarity rating. And your story really speaks to not making assumptions. And I will say I was guilty of that when I would get really high similarity ratings and automatically, I assume that the student is cheating. And, in talking with them, and explaining to them what the issue was, and then them explaining to me what they were doing, they didn't realize that what they were doing was plagiarism, because there's all different kinds of ways that you can. And one might be, using excessive direct quotes or not paraphrasing correctly. And so I think it's just really powerful in your story to just emphasize that if we do come across papers that show that high similarity rating, instead of making those assumptions, take the time to reach out to the student, discuss with them, what the issue is, and give them an opportunity to share, what they're doing. Because a lot of times through that conversation, you can help them understand, academic writing, how to properly cite and ensure it, reflects that APA formatting. So just thanks for that, reminder as well. And again, it speaks to that power of one and building relationships and not making those assumptions.
Definitely that depth of what plagiarism can mean. And I think Dr. Allar's story really highlighted that. So thank you for that, Julie, and thank you, Dr. Allar. In the chat, Marcy's mentioning an optional APA meeting. What a great idea. Just offering an office hour opportunity for everybody to get together and just, give them the basics, as Dr. Allar mentioned, some of those things they might get wrong over and over again. What a great idea, Marcy. Thank you for sharing that. And Yulia, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, emphasizing the UAGC resources. I would agree, like Dr. Allar, she, really highlighted that same thing, how many places can we remind students of all the amazing resources that are available, and then guide them through them if they need that additional support to know exactly what quiz to go look at in the Writing Center or whatever it happens to be. Highlighting those are really important. Jackie says the APA coach, not the APA referee. Sanjay, you can tell us how to coach, right? Like, get in there, coach. Diana mentions here before, our time is getting close to an end here, but I want to make sure everyone's comments are captured. Diana mentions just the mindset of not making the assumption that they're struggling and making it work in your educational journey, and students can suffer through on their own. Everyone's journey is different. I think that that's a really big highlight to pull from the story that we heard today and the stories that we hear in our classrooms every single day. Thank you, Diana. Well, it looks like our conversation is winding down, and all good things must come to an end. Ishonté, if you can go to the next slide for me. Please do watch the chat box for a link if you're here live with us in person, for a place to receive all of the recordings and their certificates of participation for our Ed Talks. If you're here on a mobile device or if you're watching the recording, you'll also find that link on the screen, and it's also in today's invitation. Before we let you go, we do want to acknowledge the work of Dr. Donna Beagle and Communications Across Barriers, as well as the members of the UAGC community for their dedication to the work of the Power of One. Tay, if you can go to the next slide for me, please. Please do mark your calendar for every third Thursday, same time, same place, to continue our series and discussion. And next up, we do have our session, Come Back and See Us, on May 19th, where Dr. Teresa Leary-Handy brings us the story of sharing connection. That'll be hosted by Dr. Jackie Kiger. We thank you so much for joining us today, and a huge thank you again to Dr. Ishonté Allar for sharing with us her story to inspire our next steps in supporting our students and each other. On behalf of the department chair, Dr. Denise Maxwell, and UAGC's College of Arts and Sciences Department of Education and Liberal Arts, we wish you a safe, healthy, and impactful April, and we'll see you next month. Thank you, everyone.